We've located some Kleenex around the room. Hey, Club Mate sales end at 6 p.m. on the mezzanine level. So if you decided you like this stuff, take the opportunity. As I've mentioned before, we do need to keep the aisles clear for fire code purposes. Please be cooperative with our friendly security folks. A couple more things going on in the conference still tonight. After closing ceremonies, we're going to be calling for a lot of help for cleaning up. And stick around. There's also going to be giveaways at that time. And folks who stick around to clean up, we do have a few volunteer shirts left over. Should be a pretty good time. So, what are we here for? Who?
We interrupt this program with a special bulletin. America is now under martial law. All constitutional rights have been suspended. Stay in your homes. Do not attempt to contact loved ones, insurance agents. Do not attempt to contact loved ones, insurance agents, or attorneys. Shut up! Do not attempt to think, or depression may occur. Stay in your homes. Curfew is at 7 p.m. sharp after work. Anyone caught outside the gates of their subdivisions after curfew will be shot. Remain calm. Do not panic. Your neighborhood watch officer will be by to collect urine samples in the morning. Anyone interfering with the collection of urine samples will be shot. Houses will be inspected for trace elements at noon. Anyone failing to display the mandatory embossed black velvet Mexican-style painting of King George Bush II on their living room wall will be shot. To further protect private property against terrorist attacks, cameras and surveillance equipment will be placed on all lampposts and streetlights. Anyone failing to attend morning school prayer and prescribed worship services on Sunday will be promptly arrested and dispatched to a re-education resort. Stay in your homes. Remain calm. The number one enemy of progress is questions. National security is more important than individual rights. Under the provisions of the War on Drugs, Zero Tolerance, and the Child Protection and Obscenity Enforcement Act, all property and life savings of suspected drug users and suspected pornographers will be seized and sold prior to trial. Anyone opposing this policy will be presumed to be under the influence of drugs and shipped immediately to boot camp to serve a sentence of hard labor beneath an inflatable statue of Nancy Reagan being humped by Samuel Alito. Sports broadcasts will proceed as scheduled. No more than 2 people may gather anywhere without permission. Use only the drugs prescribed by your coach, your boss, or your supervisor. Shut up. Be happy. Obey all orders without question. Shut up. The comfort you've demanded is now mandatory. At last, everything is done for you. Now I have to take off my reading glasses. Thanks once again for coming on down here. Should I stay? Oh, a better place to put this than here. Did anybody see that magazine cover? I can't remember whether it was Time or Newsweek, Newsweek. When Pope John Paul II died, they had a picture of him and it's laying in the open casket and all. Bad PR move, Catholic Church. And at least with people like that, they burn the bodies publicly in India. But anyway, it said something God, so I just cut that part out and put it on my fridge, a dead pope with God written above it. And I thought that was such a wonderful symbol for real organized religion today and all. Anyway, as one of my least favorite bands once put it, what a long, strange trip it's been. We don't get to see Hillary Clinton and Rudy Giuliani beat the crap out of each other for 6 solid months after all. I was so looking forward to that. Giuliani spent $40 million to get 1 delegate. Another real fun stuff from that election. Number 1, to get people munching down greasy chicken in Iowa to pull straws for him, Mike Huckabee, the fundamentalist Christian guy, had a death metal band in his tent. I wonder what the lyrics were. And Mitt Romney told a reporter that his favorite book wasn't the Book of Mormon, it was Battlefield Earth. You know, stuff like this makes my eyes pop out of my head. I save them to regurgitate them just for you. A waffle, partly eaten by Barack Obama, was put up for auction on eBay. Hey, you chewed it, man. There's DNA on there. You could frame him for crimes. Bids went up to $20,000 before eBay shut it down. Bush is bullying countries in Eastern Europe to allow us to put missiles there in Eastern Europe just in case Iran attacks. Poland. Allah Akbar, God is great. Let's go attack the Czech Republic. That'll show them. You know, all this justified saying it's Iran, even though Iran gave us $500 million when we invaded Afghanistan, and we turned around and called them the axis of evil. For that worried about Iran, why not use the old Soviet bases empty in Azerbaijan right now, next door? California. Yet another group of people learned the hard way that if you don't want your dream home you build out in the woods burned, don't build it there. Less publicized is that Bush administration has drastically cut the budget for firefighting, and there are several hundred vacancies at the moment. That's partly why so many fires burned. Finally, in 2008, Nelson Mandela was removed from our terrorist watch list. Which meant, under the current laws that a lot of Democrats, including Obama, support, you could have gone to Guantanamo Bay just for giving him a ride to the airport or something. Yeah. And those lovely $300, or if you're really lucky, $600 worth of Bush stimulus checks to save our economy seem to coincide with a sudden rise in business reported by porno stores. Meanwhile, studies have been done of school children who were blindfolded and taught nothing about sex except Bush's abstinence-only program, and it discovered that they're compensating by doing a lot of oral sex and anal sex, thinking that won't get them pregnant. We're number 1. America is number 1 among industrial nations in murder rate, traffic fatalities, child poverty, overall poverty, debt per capita, per person, energy and water consumption, carbon dioxide emissions, and the percentage of our population locked up in prison. Biggest one in history there. Meanwhile, Bush has directed the Internal Revenue Service away from auditing rich people and even fired agents who specialized in that to concentrate on auditing poor people, including the 4th time for me. And now it wants to privatize IRS debt collection. which one IRS commission calculated would net the government a little over $1 billion over a decade, where if the IRS agents did it themselves, it would net $87 billion. Major labels, the Bush administration of the entertainment industry, now have seemed to have coldly calculated, who needs to put out anything any good? We long ago forgot how to do that when we can make most of our money suing housewives and teenagers for file sharing. And come on like the Godfather with, you give us $5,000 and settle, and we'll go away. But wait a minute, I'm trying to pay my school bills. I'm going to MIT. Declare bankruptcy. Give us $5,000. They've collected $100 million so far with these shakedowns. How much of it has gone to artists? As far as I know, none. According to Rock and Rap Confidential, however, Sony BMG, 47% of the software on their own computers they use in the offices is in all likelihood pirated. While in the meantime, Sony BMG turns around and an offer to use a Dead Kennedy song in a redneck monster truck game called MotorStorm 2, they snuck into the deal. They get to give away free downloads all they want of somebody else's work. Radiohead tried to counter some of this by offering a new album where people could pay as little as they wanted to pay for it, and most Americans downloaded it for free. And EMI in Britain organized a focus group of teenagers to see what kind their tastes are like. They offered them free CDs, and the teenagers left without taking a single one. Maybe it's because it's all digital and iPod, or maybe it's just because all the CDs sucked and the kids knew it. Nowadays, sad to say, more money from music and entertainment. Well, I mean, the big one is games, even bigger than films, but where's the main money in music these days? Ringtones. Ringtones, which even Sony BMG guy calls wallpaper and stuff. And then, this worries me now that people are going to grow up young, ambitious. Boy, I know what I want to be and grow up. I don't want to be on stage in a band. I don't even want to be doing those stupid link-sync videos or groveling before those snitty judges on American Idol singing the worst music ever made. No, I want to move up to the next level. I want to be a ringtone. NATO has hired a Coca-Cola executive to retool their brand. And the latest trendy fashion accessory, as promoted by Madonna and Angelina Jolie, among others, adopting African children as pets. A 17-year-old Dutch teenager was arrested for stealing almost $6,000 worth of furniture, virtual furniture, from a virtual hotel. And somebody on there.com paid $83 for a virtual Levi's jacket when he could have had a real one for $5 less. And the Swedish virtual world Entropia Universe had a turnover last year of $365 million. As I think it was W.C. Fields said, there's a sucker born every minute. According to Harper's Magazine, 16 million barrels of oil a couple years ago were used to make water bottles. And it takes twice as much water to make bottled water as is actually contained in the bottle of bottled water. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army is now demanding that soldiers who re-enlisted and got a bonus and then were gravely maimed and wounded return that portion of the bonus for when they can't fight in the armed forces anymore. Yeah, support our troops, right? I mean, another thing I've heard from inside is if you try to get examined for post-traumatic stress syndrome, they ship you back to Iraq. Only anybody would be nuts to go there, so I guess we'll send you back. Meanwhile, Iraq, when they finally get any money, are being forced to pay it down to people who already have money in reparations for the Gulf War. Money to Kuwait, money to the Saudis, all brokered by one of the worst gangsters of our time, James Baker, who not only was appointed to negotiate down the reparations debt, but at the same time is working for the Kuwaiti government to collect as much of it as possible. But 78% of the war reparations aren't going to these countries at all. They're going to global corporations. 18 million to Halliburton, 7 million to Bechtel, and this is a couple-year-old statistic. 2.3 to ExxonMobil, 2.6 to Nestle, 3.8 million to Pepsi, 321 grand to KFC, and almost 200 grand to Toys R Us. War reparations. We have the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex, now the Homeland Security industrial complex. Who knows? Some of you may be working there. I'm sure there's recruiters who knew enough to show up. 70% of our intelligence budget now is going to private companies. Who are they working for? Who is working for them? The brain drain at Homeland Security is so bad because of this. They have trouble hanging on to people because they keep going to work for higher amounts of money from other people, just like soldiers quitting the military to work for Blackwater. And among those who've switched over are Tom Ridge, the old head of Homeland Security, and George Tenet, who's on the board of the people who make the fingerprint ID devices that he wrote into law we had to use before he resigned and went to work selling fingerprint devices. Eric Prince, who married into the Amway family and started Blackwater, now envisions a day when every single transnational corporation will be so hated because of the way they behave, they will all have to hire Blackwater to protect their executives in foreign countries. And the research group globalsecurity.org reported that for every insurgent we kill in Iraq, we fire 250,000 bullets. And the Defense Department admits it costs $400,000 per year to keep each soldier in Iraq. $400,000 per soldier. Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel Prize-winning economist who ran the World Bank for a while, said the total for this war ultimately will probably be $3 trillion. More than our annual budget. Nobody talked about $1 trillion, let alone $1 trillion deficits, until the Bush administration and their Democratic enablers went wild on this. Among the people sucking away the $3 trillion, a study was done on Halliburton and some of their subsidiaries, and this was done by the American government concurring with the total the UN came up with, that no, they didn't just steal $60 million. The total is closer to $2.7 billion, the largest robbery in the history of the world, and not a peep about bringing them to justice from people like Barack Obama. A near attack on an American boat in the Persian Gulf by Iranian rubber rafts. Oh my God, it's rubber rafts. They're attacking an American ship. Oh no, we got to go to war now. Oh, we are going to shoot you any minute. That communique turned out to be a hacker prank that the American media still doesn't admit it happened. And that missile photo of a few days ago with an extra one put in, did the Iranians put it there or did Bush and Cheney put it there? Josh Wolf, independent media journalist and blogger in San Francisco, went to jail longer than any reporter ever has in American history on the grounds that he wasn't a journalist because he wasn't getting paid. And those big porcelain balls you find on top of the TV sets in this hotel, what are they really for? Mr. Steele, Mr. Rambam, come clean, please. TSA has announced that the security scanners that do see right through your clothes and X-ray vision are now being installed as we speak at 10 American airports. Boobs, balls, and cucumbers of desire clearly visible to someone in a separate room. Just wait till this becomes portable and hits the black market. So thieves can see in advance who's got a laptop in their bag and know who to rob. But of course you can't convict them because they knew enough to leave their driver's license with the RFID chip in it at home, thus proving to the post-CSI jury that they couldn't possibly have been at the crime scene. Have you ever wondered who the Eraserhead baby would be as an adult? Well, I have, and the answer is right in front of us. It's so obvious. Think about this for a minute. John McCain. I mean, some of these are so obvious. Like, most of you have seen, what's the name of the TV show on Comedy Central where the woman gets out of jail and goes back to high school? Yeah, Strangers with Candy, Jerry Blank, Nancy Pelosi. I mean, think about that one. You'll never be able to look at one without thinking of the other ever again.
Our main purpose is to get the troops out of Iraq, but we have to vote more money because that supports the troops.
No, it doesn't. It supports Halliburton, and they all know that. And Pelosi was well aware of waterboarding for years in intelligence briefings and did nothing about it. The Eraserhead baby, the elderly Eraserhead baby, among other things, he wants to kick Russia out of the G8, legalize hate crimes in possession of a machine gun, and voted for the Military Commissions Act, the one that legalizes torture, waterboarding, rendition, where you kidnap somebody from one country and torture them to another, and legalize military tribunals where the defendant isn't allowed to see the evidence and no appeal, they just kill you. In other words, all the things we entered World War II to stop the Nazis from doing for us, doing to us. I mean, anybody who supported the Military Commissions Act ain't no better than a fucking Nazi as far as I'm concerned. And there's some Democrats on that list, too. McCain also says that Christians are more fit. God, I got to get my imitation of these guys down. I need chewing tobacco in my jaw for him, but are more fit to be president of the United States. Since this nation was founded primarily on Christian principles, I prefer someone who has a solid grounding in my faith. So, does that mean we're all going to vote for Ron Paul, right? Well, okay, I don't understand the gaga thing about Ron Paul. He's good on the war and he's good on drugs, but check out his views on abortion. Check out his views on immigrants. Check out the attacks he made in the 90s on gays, Jews, and especially African Americans, claiming the Rodney King riots ended only because it, quote, it came time for the blacks to pick up their welfare checks. Yeah, he told Tim Russert last December, the Talking Onion on Meet the Press, who died recently, that the '64 Civil Rights Act was a violation of property rights, and that Lincoln started the Civil War to get rid of the original intent of the Republic. Although he may be right on that one, it was white slave owners who wrote the Constitution and said that only white male landowners could vote way back when. We've had a breather during the dark days of Bush, because so many other things are going so bad, from the so-called culture wars, where every year or two you'd have things like Tipper Gore blaming Judas Priest and Ozzy for teen suicide and juvenile delinquency, then realizing black faces scare parents even more and going after Public Enemy, then Joseph Lieberman, your friend and mine, holding hearings in the Senate on why Marilyn Manson caused the Columbine shootings and all. Well, attacks on our freedom to read, listen, and think. And no matter which one of these clowns becomes president, that is coming back. Obama has said about games and the content, as far as taking away the edgier content that he doesn't happen to like, if the industry fails to act, then my administration would. While McCain has been a co-sponsor over the years of the Media Marketing and Accountability Act, co-sponsor Joseph Lieberman, Al Gore's vice president, who's now a little parrot wherever McCain goes. You always see him in the picture and stuff. The Media Marketing and Accountability Act was a one-size-fits-all rating system for movies, DVDs, music, and games, much nastier and more explicit and strict than the tipper sticker, the explicit lyric parental advisory. And it said that anybody who doesn't use the rating system, their products automatically become illegal. And if you try to, in other words, everything I've ever done. And if you try to sell something without the mark of the Lieber Beast, you can be fined by the Federal Trade Commission $11,000 per unit sold per day. Last time that bill came up, it had a third sponsor, Hillary Clinton. Surprise, surprise. But beware of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Is Obama the anti-Hillary? Judging from his voting record, I'm not even sure that's true. Granted, it would be kind of cool to have somebody in the White House whose first name rhymes with Iraq, whose middle name is Hussein, and his last name rhymes with Osama. And luckily, they're giving us another choice besides two royal dynasties, Bush Incorporated and the Hillbillies. But Obama looks all the more attractive as a leader precisely because he's never actually led. No defining issue or accomplishment except he's so cool. He's so cool. How can you not dig him? He's like the audacity of hope. Change we can believe in as long as it isn't too specific. He's so cool. And he is cool when you see him on TV. He's a wonderful speaker, comes across as a cool guy you could actually hang out and talk to, if only that was reflected in his voting record. Obama voted to make the Patriot Act permanent. Obama came out against the war early in 2002, but then when he was in a position of power, he keeps voting money to continue the war when he finally has the power to cut it off. And watch his language on the war very carefully. He's a very clever lawyer, after all. He says that my first act will be to tell the Pentagon to find a way to end the war. Withdraw the troops. To where? Ending the war does not mean taking the troops out. And Obama has also said he doesn't really want to take the troops out. He wants to leave as many as 80,000 of them and calls for protecting American enclaves like the Green Zone. Yo, the Green Zone belongs to the Iraqis. We stole it. It's at least, a third of the size. The Green Zone isn't Obama. Saddam's palace, like the few buildings like they show in the aerial photo. I've seen one of the whole thing, and it's maybe a third the size or more of Manhattan. It's all the downtown real estate, and we stole it all. People can't drive to work on all the boulevards anymore. It doesn't belong to us. We need to leave. And surely he's aware that we've put almost $800 million into the largest embassy ever built by a factor of 10 right along the river in the Green Zone, although it's a tiny dot on the Green Zone photo, even though it's, the size of 80 football fields. 3,000 Americans expected to work there. Wall 20 feet thick around it, got its own missile system inside, its own water supply, its own electricity supply, since we never bothered to fix the Iraqis. Just gave money to Bechtel. They didn't fix it, and that was the end of that. And basically, but what does this say to the Iraqis when it's the closest thing to us finishing a project on time? The real goal, and Obama and Hillary and Pelosi know it, is to never, ever leave. I mean, at least Ted Koppel was honest on Charlie Rose a few nights ago when he said, the talking walnut or the clamshell on his head and stuff. But we have to have 50,000 troops somewhere in that area, and we have nowhere else left to go. How about the Iraqis? Even the puppet we put in as the so-called president is telling us to get out now. And many of you know that Obama completely reversed course with a calculated stabbing in the back of every single person in this room, where after initially threatening to filibuster the new law legalizing all of the NSA's illegal wiretaps on people and letting the phone company off the hook for spying, phone companies off the hook for spying on us as well, he turned around and voted yes and gave Bush and Cheney damn near everything they wanted and a lot more than they expected, legalizing the exact same crimes that got Nixon thrown out of office during Watergate. And don't forget, when it was revealed that Bush was doing this, they took a poll, I think it was CNN, and over half the country wanted Bush impeached at that point. But oh no, Jerry Blank, Nancy Pelosi,
No, impeachment is off the table. Support the troops.
in '06, it was a little different. Obama, with all his glow and halo, no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens. No more ignoring the law when it is convenient. No one should get a free pass to violate the basic civil liberties of the American people. Not the President of the United States, not the telecom companies that fell in line with warrantless surveillance programs. But now the NSA can just go after everybody like a vacuum cleaner. But then they have a new problem. They've got so much data. How do you find somebody bad in there? That's why they didn't find the 911 hijackers ahead of time. It wasn't some badass conspiracy. It was Spinal Tap. And they'd overspied on people so much, it was like looking for a needle in a football stadium. Now we get more of that. But at least some of the phone companies did their patriotic duty and cut off the FBI's wiretaps when they forgot to pay the phone bill. Now, I wonder if this list of all the people who turned around and voted yes on this surveillance bill, that was a little test to see who gets into Obama's cabinet and who doesn't. After all, as Margaret Thatcher used to say, everything must be business as usual. Yeah, you're with us or against us. Obama voted to confirm Condoleezza Rice. He voted for putting up that anti-immigrant Berlin Wall border fence and then admitted he just did it as a horse trade to get somebody else to vote for a bill he wanted through. That infamous quote, "Sometimes you have to trim your sails." Well, you look back at what he did, giving the NSA the right to spy on all of us and everything. I can't help but think of a grinning Obama slashing the Constitution with a box cutter as he trims the sails. More trimmed sails. He said he wants universal health care, but we can't have single payer because disease industry bean counters, you know, the health insurance industry, they might wind up unemployed, which is kind of like saying we have to let the mafia keep going because otherwise we'll have unemployed gangsters. Health insurance scam artists, quote, "need a seat at the table." Isn't the health insurance industry the problem? And 2005 Energy Policy Act, Obama voted tax breaks and subsidies for fossil fuels while Exxon was taking in $30 to $40 billion a year and the biggest profit any corporation has ever made. Even McCain voted against that one. And Obama, as far as alternative fuels goes, great idea. He says we should run our cars on liquefied coal. Wonder who bought his mouth for that one. Now he sides with the Bush Supreme Court on guns and said he's open to the idea of dropping nuclear weapons on Iran. He has praised Ronald Reagan for how he beat back, quote, the excesses of the 60s and 70s, and replacing that with, quote, a sense of dynamism and entrepreneurship that had been missing that some of us would call corruption. And if he's so law and order now over spying on suspected terrorists, meaning all of us, and executing child rapists, why not apply that same zeal to promising to investigate and prosecute crimes committed by the Bush administration? Reagan and Bush's father, these same people doing the same stuff, was there for all to see. Bill Clinton gets in and says, oh, shred all the files you want. We have to let bygones be bygones. And the problem is, if you don't put them in jail, these people have a habit of coming back. I mean, at least in Watergate, they sent people to jail so he didn't wind up having CIA Director G. Gordon Liddy, or Secretary of State Nixon, or something like that. I mean, if he's not going to prosecute, we should at least do what South Africa and others have done after overthrowing dictatorships and have a truth commission. In other words, what we get instead, business as usual. Another circus of an election year with rock-bottom candidates posing as humans, desperate for people to give them more money, to buy more TV time, to lie. Flat screen on the wall. Who is the best packaged? One of all. Who best disguises what a total asshole they really are. Hey, look at Obama go. He raised over $50 million in June alone. Where is it all going? More TV ads, salaries, not building houses for homeless people, not fixing up New Orleans or Afghanistan. No, ads, 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 ads. We don't have to have the other industrial complexes. Now we have the election industrial complex. Enabled by both supposed opposing parties, where Republicans stand, of course, for greed, corruption, pollution, bigotry, and war, and Democrats stand for pretending to feel guilty about greed, corruption, pollution, bigotry, and war. Deal makers instead of leaders. Deal makers instead of leaders. I mean, John Kerry, Al Gore, Bill and Hillary Clinton, and yes, Obama, especially Pelosi, they're deal makers. They are not leaders. And the whole agenda is makeover instead of reform. Oh my God, I got in with these people. Finally, I've been elected. Now what do I do? Fuck the voters, fuck the constituents. I need to be skulking around the halls of power, trying on as many different shades of brown lipstick as I can. And hey, if I've got so much on my face I look like Ronald McDonald, I can be a committee chair. And then if I use that to put so much brown lipstick on my face I look like Al Jolson, you can stick a nickel in it, then maybe I can be a lobbyist when I leave public service and then get to lobby the very next day for the corporations I was supposed to be regulating. Maybe they'll even let me on the board of directors. How do you hold somebody like that accountable when so many wide-eyed people who should know better, think it's mission accomplished just to belong to the Barack Obama fan club, and that's all they need to do? My biggest worry of all about the Barack star is that he's drawing so many inspired people into the process that if he does turn out to be business as usual, he's going to break the hearts of a whole generation who don't bother to participate in any way ever again, except writing a little blog read by 5 people. I don't know. I was crossing my fingers for a while, but legalizing the wiretaps showed me, yep, business as usual. I remember all too well somebody else who had the audacity to misuse people's hope as a Pied Piper for the corporate agenda, and his name is Bill Clinton. That's what worries me. So laugh at Ralph Nader or not, but I think he had something interesting to say a couple months ago. You're throwing away your vote if you allow and condone this behavior. But don't worry, they'll fix it anyway because neither Obama or Hillary have said a peep about vote fraud through touchscreen digital voting machines. How many of you saw the panel in here about the ES&S machines? And that was just one of the 4 manufacturers. How easy it is not to just use different ink to get people's paper ballots to switch, but you can even take out the little, I think it's a card thing, they give you a plastic thing and put your own. I think they were showing a Palm Pilot or something, weren't they? And you can not only change votes in that little voting machine, you can send a virus through the whole system that the county's never going to figure out was there. One person can make a difference. Voting should not be privatized. And Greg Palast, who's done a lot of research on this and wrote The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, told me 2 days ago that he doesn't even think the fraud within the machinery is the worst problem this time around. It's that these same companies, ES&S and Sequoia and Premier, formerly Diebold, now the states are privatizing out to them, going over voter registration applications. They decide who gets to vote and get to decide who has a felony conviction on their record that they never knew existed because of, trying to vote while black or something like that. So even if 80% of the people fall for the Barack star, you may well see the Eraserhead baby as president instead. More good news. How many of you saw this? Mother Jones cover story on China that came out February of this year. Can the world survive China's rush to emulate the American way of life? And of course, trying to emulate the American way of life is mistake number one, if you ask me, but perhaps somebody could do better. Lots of interesting statistics in here. China, these are all quotes coming up now. China has declared a logging ban on what little remained of its old growth forest. Environmentalists applauded the idea until they grasped the corollary. Chinese companies began harvesting other countries' trees on a grander scale. And today, Thailand and the Philippines have been stripped of most of their forests, and Indonesia, Burma, and even Siberia could be gone in less than 20 years, mainly to supply wood to IKEA and Home Depot. And the way they do it in Russia is just to torch them, so they say, oh, forest fires, salvage the wood. And in 2003, there were so many fires that it blew the smoke into Seattle. And the dust blowing off China's ever-growing deserts is now coming to California. And I assumed it was the coal dust, too, because now, even though my car's in the garage, every couple days, I have to run the wipers to get this brown film off the windshield. Thank you, China. Let's see, what else have we got here? China adds 25,000 cars per day to its roads, and the number of cars is expected to grow from 33 million to 130 million over the next 12 years. And if the Chinese middle class, which are expected to go from 100 million up to 700 million, if they are ever going to reach our lifestyle, it will require the resources of several Earths. Yes. But fear not, even the Chinese government admits they now have at least 80,000 disturbances, read demonstrations, uprisings, and riots, every year there now. Not even the Chinese like getting gassed or killed if they don't obey or whatever, but according to Naomi Klein, in an article that only Rolling Stone, of all people, would print, China has a solution for that too. They call it the Golden Shield. And it will work where Chinese citizens will be watched around the clock through all these network closed caption TV cameras and remote monitoring of computers. They will be listened to on their phone calls, monitored by digital voice recognition technologies. Their internet access will be aggressively limited through the country's notorious system of online controls known as the Great Firewall. Their movements will be tracked through national ID cards with scannable computer chips and photos that are instantly uploaded to police databases and linked to the holder's personal data. The most important element of all, linking all these tools together in a massive searchable database of names, photos, residency information. When Golden Shield is finished, there will be a photo on those databases for every single person in China. 2006, the Chinese government mandated that all internet cafes, as well as restaurants and entertainment venues, install video cameras with direct feeds to police stations. Tibetan monks now complain that cameras activated by motion sensors are in their monasteries and even their prayer rooms. A lot of the technology has come from General Electric, Honeywell, and a shady company in Connecticut called LI Identity Solutions, the ones who make the fingerprint scanner that George Tenet is on the board of. And the Chinese, you know, they're pumping up dictators even we don't want to deal with in the third world so they can take the oil first. They're building aircraft carriers. Maybe a President Obama should say to these companies helping create this, sometimes you have to trim your sails. We don't dare say nothing about that because China now holds more than $1 trillion of public and private U.S. debt. That's the only reason Bush can get away with his budget deficits. We borrow from the Chinese, among others, which in a way means they can't switch to euros because it's in their best interest to keep the dollar alive if they ever want to get their money back. But if they ever get so mad at us for criticizing them for anything and skip even one of our bond auctions, we are toast. So what do we do now? I know, start a blog. Vent, vendity, send! Mission accomplished. Yeah, I feel so much better now. I mean, I don't want to put down the existence of blogs. It's people becoming the media, and I hope we finally moved past this mindset of the internet is automatically right and that bloggers are automatically better than reporters, but not much. I mean, the blog explosion is in part, of course, because more and more people, even ones we wouldn't think are on our side, completely distrust the joke of corporate McNews. You know, they know not to believe the legion of castrati, who we might as well call them what they are these days, prostitutes. Oh my God, look at Anderson Cooper kick ass. His hair's blowing in the hurricane. God, he's got guts. He ain't gonna question Cheney though, that's for sure. I mean, the blogs, the best part is anyone can do it and anything goes. And the worst part is anyone can do it and anything goes. And some people poison it for everybody else by being a lot looser with the truth than CNN and Fox combined. Of course, now there are bloggers paid by corporations to look like your average citizen, enthusiastic for the corporation. According to Wired, the military is now thinking of hiring their own blogging brigade to promote their spin and message on things, or trash a specific critic they want to neutralize. Two interesting examples of how the corporate media uses younger independent media people are right in my hometown. The San Francisco Chronicle is one, who's now the only paper left, and thinks of themselves as the local New York Times, but now it takes even less time to read than the New York Times does, significantly less. And they devote more and more of their space to bloggers and reviews of bloggers, while Channel 4, who used to have a very reputable news department, keeps laying off their real reporters and just going through an endless conveyor belt of cub reporters and indie media people with a camera, perhaps because they don't have to pay them. Oh, wow, this is even better than reality shows. We don't have to spend money on anybody. We'll just use them all. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Recent study by Cardiff University in Wales concluded that 12%, at least of news stories in Great Britain, only 12% were entirely composed of material researched by reporters. 8% they couldn't really tell, but the other 80% was all based on secondhand stories, and only 12% of those were fact-checked at all. Bringing us into this weird, as Stephen Colbert calls it, weekiality, where everything is true because nothing is true, because everything is true because nothing is true. Most bloggers are pundits, not journalists. Cool to read, you can learn something from the good ones who do it well, but not very few of them actually do their own research, and for that reason, I don't quote blogs in my spoken word shows as a source unless I have something else to back it up besides the blog. Plus, the blogosphere should not ever be allowed to become a drug, where people are so into blogging with like-minded bloggers and they have all their like-minded news groups that they're all limiting themselves to this echo chamber where they all agree with each other all the time. I mean, you need outside opinions, you need dissent in order to figure out what's really going on out there in the big, bad world. And the answer to clueless or bullshit bloggers is not restrictions on bloggers, it's just continuing the effort and intensifying effort to get through to everybody how important it is to practice media literacy. I don't think people should graduate from high school till they pass a class on media literacy, but since they don't teach those classes, we have to teach it ourselves and point out to people young and old when there is out and out bullshit, especially if you laugh at it with them and then they never quite believe everything they see on CNN or Fox News again. In other words, don't just question authority, question bloggers. Because when you never know where anybody's coming from, especially in the blogosphere, especially if they're treating it as their own little drug, we all got to help everybody else develop better, sharper bullshit detectors. But what do you do if the bullshit is aimed at you and you don't even know who's doing it because they're too chicken to sign their own names? I mean, there's some famous examples of this, like some swift boat type people accused Hillary Clinton of snubbing the Gold Star mothers. Yes, and never mind who the Gold Star mothers are. I mean, they're basically a support group for mothers of people who've died in combat and all. And it turned out she never did snub them. She did meet with them, and the Gold Star mothers have tried to get this misinformation off the net for years now, but it keeps popping up right alongside all the reports that Barack Obama is a secret Muslim. You know, you wonder if that's a professional job. I mean, the same with the 9/11 conspiracy theories. How many people who've fallen into becoming passionate believers in that trace back the origins of much of it to Lyndon LaRouche? I mean, this way, in the blogosphere, sure, you can become the media, but some people use, yeah, I can be my own Joseph Goebbels. I can be the new devil child of Karl Rove. Personal, individual swift boating against anybody I don't happen to like. Anyone can swift boat anyone else. And this has already been documented to influence local elections and cost people their offices based on stuff sent anonymously that didn't turn out to be true. Ex-lovers, former bosses can lie about you on the net. So can fired employees, for that matter. And as Winston Churchill once put it, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. But if a blogger says it, then it must be true. Well, twice this year this has happened to me. One of them came from the former bass player of Dead Kennedys, Klaus Fluoride, who of course was one of the people who sued me to swipe Dead Kennedys away, in large part because I didn't want to put Holiday in Cambodia in a Levi's commercial. Well, and by lying in court and using big corporate lawyers, they swiped all the rights to Dead Kennedys. It now goes out on a label called Manifesto that I have no respect for at all. They are managed by a guy who, his other main client is a Christian folk artist. And they continue to this day to do fake reunion shows with pictures of me in the ads. But nevertheless, there goes Klaus whining on the internet, sending it out to punk news groups, putting it up on his MySpace, when Dirk Dirksen, the entrepreneur of Mabuhay Gardens, where a lot of us like Avengers and the Dills, Crime Nuns, later Dead Kennedys and Flipper all got their start. He died last year, and so there was a memorial concert for him, and Klaus put on, "How dare Jello Biafra bar me from going to the show and saying goodbye to Dirk?" Never mind, the service had already happened. What he didn't say in his blog was that the venue itself 86'd Klaus and East Bay Ray years ago for the way they mistreat so many other people in the scene and all. They wouldn't let him in the door even if I wanted to let him in the door. But oh no, immediately you get little hits on the blogs. Oh, Bong Bear talks about what a terrible person I am. Oh, and Anarchy Muffin is just in stitches about what an evil person I am. What can we do? And even some old friends fell for that one, which really pisses me off. All of them without ever stopping to ask if it was true. And then an ex-girlfriend of mine decided to do some internet mischief to get back at me. First, she MySpaced my current girlfriend, documenting all these kinky sexual perversions, real and imagined, not mentioning which ones were her idea, in hopes of driving the current girlfriend away. That backfired when the current girlfriend said, "Well, yeah, I realize it's kind of weird, but some of this sounds kind of cool. Why didn't you tell me about some of this?" And I wind up getting a kinkier girlfriend than the last time. So then she tried again and put up a blog on a pop punk news group about how evil I was, saying she was a kept woman and not allowed to leave my house and not allowed to have her own friends, when the opposite was true. She clung. And that's why I broke up in part. And saying that I kept weapons in my car in case I found Ray and Klaus, because I intended to kill them. Which I'm sure those people's lawyers are going to have a field day when they decide to strike again and whatnot. And sure enough, just like the last time, there's Mohawk Elf and Mushroom Boy or whoever, and even Jim Testa from Jersey Beat just parroting along about how evil and bad I am without ever asking themselves if any of it is true. And this can really fuck the lives up of innocent people. I may be the big, bad, small-time underground celebrity here, but in a way, I'm defenseless. I'm David and they're Goliath. I'm Iraq and they're Blackwater. Why? Because I'm the visible target that some wankers love to talk shit about, while the liar stays invisible and therefore avoids being a target because nobody cares that much about them to gossip about them and everything. If a blogger says it, then it must be true. Welcome to high school. Well, I got news for you. I learned long ago that no one should waste their time fighting childish little internet or fanzine wars with people with too much time on their hands, so chicken shit they won't even sign their own goddamn names. I don't care what Metal Skunk or Ladybug Ninja or anybody else thinks of me. As the great philosopher Jerry Lee Lewis once said, I am what I am. So you can take your little cyber potato American Idol beauty contest and fuck you. I'll just be me. But this got me thinking, we are rapidly approaching an age where everybody, because of this and YouTube and whatnot, is going to be under their own our-town version of Britney Spears Klieg lights, and our own personal reputations trashed on YouTubes and poison pin nasty blogs before anybody is even old enough to drink. Thus leaving people with no one to be inspired or influenced by, because look at them, everybody sucks. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? At least it levels the playing field. At the same time, this risks people being desensitized to really bad behavior by genuine assholes, because look at them. Everybody's an asshole to anybody. You can't trust anyone. No trust, no respect, no admiration, no inspiration. I mean, in a way, the explosion of virtual communities on the internet shows how isolated and lonely we are in our self-imposed virtual cocoons. It shows a deep, desperate hunger to, as the phone company said, reach out and touch someone and have some meaningful connection to others without leaving your desk or cubicle, I guess. 3 sociologists who worked at the University of Arizona and Duke University did a 20-year study from 1985 to 2004 that showed a sharp decline in the number of people the average American discussed anything meaningful with. Fewer close relationships with coworkers, neighbors, even family, even friends. I mean, if the World Wide Web is bringing everybody together, how come we're getting more and more disconnected? I fear that my spacing out and Facebooking your face and all that is leading to a generation. I don't think middle school people, especially, and people younger, should feel this intense peer pressure that they have to advertise, package, and market themselves as a product on the internet just to validate their existence as a human being in order to make friends. Granted, some of this can be funny, like, some people package themselves a little different than they actually are, especially if they're older, divorced, and want to get laid or something. Reminds me of that Beavis and Butthead episode where they call up a dial-a-porn number and get this really sultry voice on the other end, and then they go to the other end, and there's this old woman with a cigarette and half her hair gone, sitting in a trailer and all. That kind of reminds me of this. Zippy the Pinhead had a great one on this too. My Facebook page is up and running, and I'm already friending every dry cleaner in a tri-state area. Yow! I'm getting attacked now. Why did I wait so long to open myself up to abuse like this? I feel validated, humiliated, and 13 all over again. A lawyer from Google had this to say to the New York Times a while back. Young people don't care about privacy the way they once did, especially if they're being told that this is the way you consume and everybody's got to put up, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. And only now are some of them finding out when they get a little older that a snotty teenage comment you made on Facebook can cost you a job as an adult or get you thrown out of college. Prospective employers now mine MySpace and Facebook and the other things like it, looking for dirt and looking for people not to hire. Never mind who might be best for the job, let's see how they screwed up and disqualify them that way. In a weird way, though, I do look forward to the day when something like this happens to some family values politician or right-wing Supreme Court nominee, and suddenly they go down in flames like the Hindenburg when somebody finds out about all the animals they bragged they had sex with while drunk on their Facebook page as a teenager. On the other hand, does this mean if we're going to participate in this network that we all have to be as paranoid about our every single thing we do from childhood, or, just like some egomaniac who's planning to run for president in 30 years, do we all have to be that careful and walk on eggshells even in our own bedrooms, imprison ourselves in a constant state of, I tried but I didn't inhale? I mean, that being watched like that, having to worry about that is even crueler than the Catholic Church. And with no chance to confess and magically make everything all better. I mean, that is hardly my idea of expanding democracy. And Google, among others, has made it their business to collect and store and sell more information about you and everything you've bought and everything you read than the FBI, the CIA, and the Keystone Stormtroopers at Homeland Security combined. And Facebook, as many of you know, launched their Beacon service last year, notifying users' friends of a person's online purchases without their permission, thus exposing in advance what you're going to get for Christmas from those people. But what if you look up, oh, this friend who you've been going out with who's on your Facebook page just bought a pregnancy test and you've been out of town for a month. Yeah, and you thought Obama voting to let the NSA spy on us was your worst problem. This is how we volunteer to be violated by these people. Annalee, I hope I say her last name right, Navitz, anyway, who until recently wrote for the San Francisco Bay Guardian and was the best thing in the paper, she had an interesting comment about this. The more public our friend lists are, the more we feel like we have to pick our friends based on public opinion. That's not expanding democracy, that's high school. Facebook and MySpace and the others are all good tools, of course, to expand what you know and who you know, but if that's all people want to know, again, they're dumbing themselves down, and we can't let that happen. We can't be in the information age and allow people to know less and less and less. Is this much screen suckling making people smarter, or is it making people dumber? And I will use some of the same examples I used last time, because if anything, this has gotten worse. Oh, did you talk to that person? Yeah, I talked to him. Well, what did they say? Oh, I didn't talk to him, I just emailed them. That's not talking to somebody. Sending an email, not waiting for a reply, and assuming your job is done, wrong. Communication is an equation. You got to get the other half of the communication or you have not communicated. And just, sitting there day after day, didn't you get my email? Didn't you get my email? I mean, if you're that desperate, call them on the phone. And in the age of instant messaging, it's amazing how this works. You ask somebody something on the phone, they answer you instantly. And you know what you can do instantly after that is to ask them another question. And they answer it, and you can ask them another question, and you've saved yourself weeks of snitty emails to get more stuff done. An ex-girlfriend of mine in LA said she was out at a club seeing a band a while back, and a woman came up to her, chatted her up, they hit it off really well. She tells the other woman her name, "Oh, you're my MySpace friend." And then the other woman walked away. It's like, "Oh, I just didn't want to actually talk to you or find out you were real. I just wanted your picture in my gallery of virtual friends where I feel more comfortable at home. These are my special friends because they never talk back to me. I love my friend collection, my trophy room." Used to be that living in a world of imaginary friends was considered a mental illness. Text, texty, text. I'm 20 yards away from you at the mall, but I'm not going to talk to you. Or worse, texty, text. "Jello, where are you? I'm waiting at the train station." I call the person back. Another one, zip, "I'm waiting at the train station." "Well, I'm trying to call you, but your phone turned off." Zip, "I'm waiting for the train station." "Why didn't you text me? I was standing right over there." "Well, why didn't you just come up and talk to me and tell me who you were?" Dumb. I mean, the California teenagers went on the news and were outraged when the law went through that you couldn't be yapping on your phone while holding your phone to your ear while you're driving, saying, "That's not going to stop me. I know my rights. If somebody texts me, I'm going to text them back right then and there, even if I'm driving through a major intersection in Mom's SUV. Wham!" And it's interesting, though, the language, the texting is, when you get kind of tired of it after a while but won't admit it, you keep shortening words, new abbreviations and new language and all. Maybe it'll be like Chinese and Japanese and Korean characters. Who knows eventually? But some of these abbreviations, it feeds this impulse in Americans to abbreviate their brains and abbreviate the amount of time they think, too. Carbohydrates. Very few people knew or cared what that was. But as soon as it was shortened to carbs, everyone was deathly afraid of them for about 2 years. Now, short attention span America has been treated to Washington Mutual, the bank, shortening their name to WAMU to be better understood by short attention span people. "Hi, I need to get into my account and talk about something." "What's your social?" "What do you mean?" "What's your social?" "I don't know what a social is. What are the Social Security number?" "Oh, too many syllables. Now I understand." "Okay, fine." And on the other hand, there was a research firm called Bassex in Silicon Valley who did research on some people who both live and work on the net and concluded that a typical information worker checks their email at least 50 times a day, or over once every 10 minutes, and sends instant messages 77 times a day and stops at 40 websites, and that all these interruptions and loss of concentration, mostly due to stuff that wasn't that important in the first place, costs U.S. business over $650 billion a year. And people take it home with it, too. Laptops on the plane. The child has a toy laptop to imitate their go mom. Laptops at the beach. The Guardian in Britain has come up with a great term for some of this. So I must ask, are you a crackberry addict? Crackberry addicts who have to have their BlackBerry right by their bed or under their pillow, even in the middle of the night. Zzz, you got a text message. "Oh, I better answer that right away. Oh, I better answer that right away." A crackberry addict. Some people in the psychology field are calling this ringxiety. And even I have discovered that sometimes I feel vibrations in my pocket and reach in and, oh my God, got me again. Phantom phone syndrome. A recognized medical malady now. San Francisco Chronicle reported that so far this year, 2 professional bloggers have died from lack of sleep. They did stock market ticks or something where seconds count, and a 40-year-old one almost died when he had a heart attack. So I must ask, does the crackberry life get you ahead, or is the world just passing you by? I mean, and if we keep getting this MySpaced out, text, instant this, instant that, we're kind of missing everything else and are that much easier to manipulate. And what are we creating here when the cyber world and instant blipping and blooping is more real than reality? What happens when these people are in charge? An example of what happens when someone is so completely disengaged, they live in a virtual world all their own, who just bounces from one childish impulse to another. Granted, the origins are different. Perfect example of this is when you hand something like that something really important. Look no further than the red, white, and blue Caligula himself, George W. Bush. You know, people are so into Obama, they forget who is still president and could bomb Iran anytime.
The problem with the French is they don't have a word for entrepreneur.
Some of these are new quotes, too. They stopped printing a lot of them once he was in the White House, but they still keep coming out.
If the Iranians were to have a nuclear weapon, they could proliferate. It is clear our nation is reliant upon big foreign oil. More and more of our imports come from overseas.
Will the highways on the internet become more few?
I know how hard it is for you to put food on your family.
I haven't had this much fun with creative mutilation of the English language since my sophomore year in high school, when I had this geometry teacher whose parents were from Norway, but he was from Minnesota and talked like all the characters in the Fargo movie. And he had, in the 70s, the bell-bottom 70s, he had baggy Charlie Chaplin pants and a white shirt and a skinny tie with a flannel hunting shirt over it, a disproportionately small, turtley-looking head and wavy widow's peak hair on top, and started out just seemingly as a dull math class or something, but a few weeks in, things began to get more and more interesting.
Yeah,
We're talking about the angle CAB. Excuse me, B. Angle AD. Boy, am I having a time today. And then it grew and grew and grew. And luckily, me and another friend in an earlier class period started writing his quotes down. So I had a notebook 1.5 inches thick by the end of the year. And with such pearls of wisdom and words to live by as his ongoing battle with congruent triangles. Yeah. We working with Klangagi Trubers. No. Congruent triangulars, son-going triangulars, congruent, where was there? Excuse me, Oh, yes, triangulars. No, tringlers. Oh, no, trianglers. Oh, I can't even try. We can multiply. No. Yes! We can multiply, multiply, multiply if the indexes are the same. And then the Freudian slips about food, sex, and Watergate began to come out. So, let's plug in the cabbage, nig, a bobaronk, values, and see what we can do. Now you can't, can't lure a radicler in the derominator. And then finally, one day, he comes out and asks the class, Oberdiampus blabby dwerp. Not one word of English left in the entire sentence. And I did some of the shows in Norway where I asked Norwegians, look, is this actually Norwegian, he said? No. Nor is asking the class poofy snibble abby glob, Norwegian. Nor is asking the class digglab wubba two nab radical boo, Norwegian. Nor is it Norwegian to burst into song in the middle of a problem and serenade the class with rubber gloves, sauteed over night noble fire. Rubber gloves, sauteed over open fire. Why do? Can't? Shouldn't I eat it? Extends X. We've got another quadratic, so we all equal 32. One more. Wouldn't be the first time that I've been onion. No, wrong. Ship. Barbie nipple dog do. Bush. This quote is about 10 days old. The relationship between the United States and Europe is the broadest and most vibrant it has ever been. What? I mean, remember when he said that when he met Vladimir Putin, I looked into his eyes and I saw his soul. What is less widely publicized is what Putin had to say about Bush. A while back, he compared Bush to, quote, a madman running about with a razor in his hand.
No one needs to tell me what I believe, but I need somebody to tell me where Kosovo is.
And this is who's in charge of a war. And we've got him and his wisdom and the evil regents around the Clown Prince for 6 more months, and they're hell-bent on finding an excuse to attack Iran. Bush was even asked, well, what does your father think of what you're doing over there?
Oh, there's a higher father I appeal to.
And then they got to jump all over people like John Kerry or Jesse Jackson or Kanye West or the Dixie Chicks for one patriotically incorrect thing. But then in the 2004 election, Bush actually got away with telling a group of Amish people on the campaign trail in July of 2004, I trust God speaks through me. What? Is this why he's never wrong and has no regrets about anything he does? Is because, everything he does, and anytime you question him, you're questioning the will of the Almighty? We can think of somebody else with that exact same mentality who's caused similar problems, and his name is Osama bin Laden. Yeah. Bob Woodward, in the second of the 3 books he wrote about the Bush administration, after we went into Iraq, he asked the Clown Prince, how is history going to judge what you've done here?
We don't know, and I'll be dead.
What? 6 more months, people. Is he one of these last generation nut jobs? He already has a guy who should still be in jail for Contragate crimes. Elliot Abrams is the Undersecretary of State for Middle Eastern Affairs, having regular meetings with the Christian right and the Jewish right to get everybody on the same page as to where Israel's borders should be when the Messiah comes back. Yeah, I mean, what happens if somebody does put in Bush's little pea brain, well, maybe you are the Antichrist. You want the rapture to happen, don't you? You want Jesus to come back, don't you?
Well, yeah, I've been waiting to take him around the ranch in my golf cart called Gator.
Well, for that, you need the rapture, George, and for that, you need Armageddon, George. Come on, George. Push the buttons, George. Then you blow up the world hundreds and hundreds of times with all of our weapons of mass destruction. Then you can be commissioner of baseball in heaven. 6 more months. I mean, some of this end-time stuff is kind of cool. I kind of like the rapture in a way. All the hardcore, fundamentalist, bigot believers who go so far out of their way to make everybody else so miserable, all rising up into the heavens at once, like in a Jack T. Chick comic book, all rising into the heavens naked to leave the rest of us to put the planet back together in peace. That I don't mind. Armageddon could really ruin your shopping day. It could really wreak havoc with your Facebook and MySpace pages if everything melts. So what do we do when we're still under the iron fist of a Bush, a Dick, and a Colin? And I bring Colin back because Obama's hanging out with him now. The rest of the world and all the craziness doesn't stop just because we're having a tabloid circus of an election whose cycle goes on way, way, way too long just so the election industrial complex can make money and everybody's so sick of the evil of two lessers that they don't vote at the end. No, this isn't just against Bush. Even if he's not on TV anymore, we are still left with Bushism itself and a very spineless response on what supposedly is the other side. How many of you are as sick of this stuff as I am? How many of you care enough to get up your ass and do something about it? How many of you think our drug laws are totally insane? How many of you think the war on terror, or TWAT for short, especially what we're doing in Iraq, is totally insane? How many of you refuse to live under the thumb of a Stone Age Supreme Court who think a bunch of old men have to decide what every single woman does with her own body? Yes. How many of you think the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, and this new wiretapping legalization should all be flushed down the toilet? All of it. And how many of you believe that one of the countries in the world most urgently in need of a real regime change is this one? So how many of you are registered to vote? I think I saw less than half the hands in this room go up. You know, oh, you don't even want to vote for Ron Paul to show how independent you are? You don't even bother to do that? There's the problem. I'm not just for insurrection in the streets, which I have a soft spot in my heart for, but take the Fifth Amendment on some things. I also believe in insurrection in the voting booth. We need both to get anything done. I would rather vote for what I want and not get it than vote for something I don't want and get it. And even though I throw up my hands at the big national offices, except for the alternative candidates, the reason to vote is local elections. It matters who's mayor. It matters who's on the city council, the county commissioners, and state legislators. Finally, you get rid of Joseph Bruno in New York. Hopefully, there's going to be something done to save rent control around here. That's why you've got to pay attention to these people and vote on these things. Plus, we have a privilege in this country that people don't have in Canada or any European country I know of. The ballot initiative, the referendum, the propositions, we're at the city level, county, state. You can vote yes or no on a controversial law that legislators are too corrupt and chicken shit to vote on themselves. And since hardly anybody shows up to vote in local elections, and means that if more people like us get still more people like us to register and get off their ass and show up and vote smart, we stand a much better chance of getting somebody cool elected, good laws passed, and taking back our country and our society from the ground up. Far less people in this country support the religious right than we are led to believe, but they have used this tactic very, very effectively to get power in way disproportionate to their numbers, and there's a lot more of us than there is of them, and we are not using our power in this area. This isn't all cartoon time, like red states versus the blue states, although if you look at what people actually believe in red states and blue states, we're mostly pro-choice, pro-environment, wanted Bush impeached over spying, want to get out of Iraq. and tolerant of gay people getting married, believe it or not, according to the Pew Foundation. Anyway, this is not red states, blue states. It's not donkeys and elephant or left, right, or black, white. This is a contest, a war between the top and the bottom. I hate to use an old radical cliche like class war, but that's exactly what's being waged in this country against almost everybody who lives in this country. I'm hoping this whole anti-war and anti-Bush surge will surge all the way into reigniting and spreading as never before the anti-corporate movement, the anti-globalization movement. As Ralph Nader puts it, corporations should be our servants, not our masters. And we are not alone in believing that. I mean, even a lot of people who take Rush Limbaugh seriously, they're worried about the same things. It's just that their anger is being channeled into hate and race baiting and picking on poor people. They're worried about food being put on the table. And they're told to blame immigrants and minorities instead of the corporations who are shipping jobs overseas, gutting the unions and stealing their pension funds and taking away their health care. And every time we buy any of those people's products, we are their serfs. Not alone in other people in the world. I'm going out on a limb this time because I don't know my digital issues that well, and you keep bringing me here anyway. But theoretically, it is a good thing that Cuba and Venezuela are giving Microsoft the finger and ditching Windows for open source. Linux. Bush and Cheney announced about a year ago the creation of AFRICOM, African Command. We have a Northern Command of the Army for the Northern Hemisphere, CENTCOM for the Middle East, trying to colonize them, keep them under our corporate thumb. Now, since there's oil in Africa and we want to plunder it before the Chinese or India does, we have to have troops all over Africa. So AFRICOM has created but one problem. Now it's come out, but only in the foreign press, from where I can find it, is they had to give up on having AFRICOM headquarters in Africa because no African country would let us in to build the thing. Not one. Africa will be governed from Stuttgart, apparently. And then there's people, you know, who were inspired by the so-called spirit of Seattle, the attacks on the G8 and corporations still going on all over the world, people pulling up frankenfood crops in Brazil, India, Scotland, France. In Scotland, Blair tried to prosecute people for pulling up plants under anti-IRA terrorism laws. I don't know what the outcome of that is. But anyway, well, this is an example of the people being inspired to, you know, you look at the big picture, it's pretty damn depressing. But that isn't stopping people from breaking off a piece of the puzzle, taking a piece of the big picture, and fighting smaller, winnable local battles, one by one, brick by brick. Corporations are trying to make everybody's water supply privatized. No more public service, no more sense of community, where thereby they take it over, they lay people off, and they double the price of the water. In Bolivia, that was rioted away, and Bechtel had to flee the country. Uruguay, they knew enough to put it to a vote, and Uruguayans voted no way to privatizing the water. This belongs to the people. Now it's even happened in America, where Stockton, California, and even Atlanta, Georgia, have kicked out the privateers, rolling it back. Ever heard of a little town called Potrero, California? 45 miles out in the desert east of San Diego. Their county commissioners thought it would be a great idea to have Blackwater put up a huge privatized military training base to train mercenaries there to go after illegal immigrants and kill them off Blackwater style and stuff. People responded by recalling all 5 county commissioners who voted yes and throwing Blackwater out of town. Heard of the coalition of Immokalee workers from Immokalee, Florida, who've gone through all kinds of hell, especially out in the fields where they pick the tomatoes that go into McDonald's burgers, Burger King, and the rest. They rose up without support of any of the big unions in a campaign that only went through college campuses, no corporate media coverage, not even Bill O'Reilly or Glenn Beck to try and bash them out of existence. And sure enough, campuses began kicking Taco Bell out of the quad. Taco Bell agreed to raise the tomato pickers' wages and do business with the coalition of Immokalee workers. McDonald's didn't even fight when they targeted them next. They just did it. Burger King did fight in the point of hiring spies to go after the organizers. Now Burger King has agreed to pay their tomato pickers closer to a minimum wage. Insurrection does work. In other words, insurrection of the wallet in this case. United Students Against Sweatshops has even gotten people like University of Oregon and Duke University to quit making their rah, 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 go football team, go basketball team swag in overseas sweatshops and get them made where the people get treated okay in the factories. Safeway and Vons, at least in California, publicly announced they won't carry any more milk with bovine growth hormone in it. No more second graders developing breasts and no more sinus infections for me, hopefully. And they said it was in response to consumer pressure, and I don't recall a single public campaign against this targeting Safeway, but somehow it happened anyway. And even in Florida, they've banned touchscreen voting machines. As the panel on ES&S points out, that alone does not solve the problem, but it does mean that even if the corporate media won't cover vote fraud and the Barack star won't say one thing about it, well, somebody did and it worked. You know, don't let the farty old left or the right ever convince you that, you know, the war about from the bottom against the top and most of us against a few billionaires and all, it's all about the battle of the proletariat against the big bad fascist pigs. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to have meetings, God damn it. No! I mean, it isn't all fun and games, but resistance should at least have some joy in it, right? Even if it's as little as me emceeing this big-ass anti-war protest concert in Washington, D.C. in 2005, and that was an interesting time there in the dressing room tent. Oh my God, there's Al Sharpton, there's Ian Mackay, there's Brother Wayne Kramer, there's Maxine Waters, there's Jesse Jackson, there's the Tigre, there's, Joan Baez. Wow, 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 wow. But I went on stage to introduce one of them, and there was a kid who could have been more than 13 holding up a sign with a big grin on their face, Dick Cheney kills kittens. There are some other great ones there people having fun with. Will someone give the president a blowjob so he can be impeached? Or, after what had happened a few days before, no Iraqi ever left me on a roof to die. That one was pretty good, too. I mean, doing something is better than doing nothing. Every time. I mean, don't let the more radical than thou ever convince you that just because you're not doing as much as they're doing or the same thing they're doing that you might as well not do anything at all. Wrong. Doing something's better than doing nothing. It can be as simple as just making a little vow to yourself, if you so desire, I'm not cooperating with corporations or their agenda anymore. They can't have me. And that means don't give them your money anymore. No more money to chain stores. No more money to chain restaurants. Put the money in the local businesses that keep the money and the jobs in the community instead. And even at the independent stores, start kind of keeping track of how many products you buy that are made by global corporate predators that you can do without. I mean, does Coca-Cola taste as good as it did when you were a kid? And how much does Budweiser or Coors have in common with decent beer? Well, another easy one, who's done some of the worst damage to our society as well by funding all these hate groups and shit, as well as creating Jesse Helms out of thin air and ripping apart third world economies? Tobacco companies. Boycott cigarettes, and your breath may even smell good during sex. You never know. There are benefits. I mean, this could be like drugs or tattoos. The more you do it, the more you want to go further. I haven't eaten at McDonald's in about 30 years. Yeah. Why is that even worth applauding? How hard is it to not eat at McDonald's when they suck so bad? Right, okay. If I don't want to eat at McDonald's, then why should I eat at Burger King? Why should I eat at Wendy's? I've never eaten at Wendy's in my life. I'll piss in their pots. I won't buy their food. My palate deserves better. You know, some of this is, you aren't suffering at all. It's just, the more you think about it, the more you can do this stuff, and at least nobody can be as pure as the driven snow and unplug completely unless you want to wind up as insane as the Unabomber or something. But anyway, and as hard as it is to find meaningful work that'll actually pay the bills in this day and age, you don't wind up my age still living in a rat hole with roommates you can't stand, try not to work for them. Don't give them your time, your energy, your intelligence. But if you must work for a global corporate predator, especially people here should remember how the digital age has ushered in such a whole wide new frontier of sabotage on the job. What is the last unspoiled art form left on Earth? No, not sex. Good guess, though. Crime! You don't get scholarships to go to crime school at the Fashion Institute or anything. You don't have this whole Canaan coming down of important criminals to do academic studies of. It's still wide open. And I've always had a soft spot in my heart for creative crime. What can I say? And I think a lot of you know that there's been some very interesting hacker attacks on Scientology lately, after they forced something off of YouTube because they didn't like how it portrayed their beloved Tom Cruise. And even what was called Google bombing, where if you look up dangerous cult on Google, Scientology pops up. And of course, that great YouTube ad is Hillary Clinton as Big Brother. That was very influential in sabotaging the agenda of somebody who was basically a female Richard Nixon for all practical purposes. So I'm thinking, if anybody can access, or better yet, hackcess all the records of the Bush administration and their emails that they claim they can't find before they destroy and delete everything the way Bush's father did with 2 months straight of paper shredding before Bill Clinton came in, get it, store it, save it, so we know what the hell happened later on. There's been some great anti-war pranks. I got to recall you from the Gulf War, too. One of them was some people put up a flyer around Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas. It was saying that, well, to protest the war, such and such a time, in the civic square of Fort Worth, we will kill our pets. And so then, hundreds of people show up at the appointed time. All the news trucks are there, waiting. And two teenagers come in incognito, watching all these suckers, waiting, costing their companies valuable company time by leaving work for the afternoon, all showing up waiting for somebody to kill their pets. And it never happened. In the first few days of the Gulf War, flyers went up on the streets of downtown San Francisco during the mass protests where the proletariat people tried to claim they were in charge, and everybody just stormed past them and turned it into an all-night Mardi Gras several nights in a row. People who shall not be named put up flyers calling for a general strike. Which, you know, general strikes are cool. I mean, I'm not often nostalgic for the old days, but we need to bring back general strikes. They had one in Vancouver in, I think, the early 90s. It is possible. But anyway, flyers, general strike on such and such a day, endorsed by Jerry Garcia, Bill Graham, venerable local news columnist Herb Cain, star quarterback Joe Montana. What this meant was corporate McNews began tracking down people like Joe Montana and asked him, hey, what are you doing calling for a general strike? Then it gets on the 6 o'clock news. Joe Montana denied today he was in any way responsible for this flyer scene in downtown San Francisco, and then the general strike gets advertised on television. And I repeat my request from the last time. If you're as concerned about vote fraud as I am, and I never thought in this day and age, in this country, we'd have to be fighting for our right to vote. But we are. And so one of the best ways, I think, to expose digital vote fraud and shut that racket down once and for all, if they can hack those machines, so can we. And imagine the reptilian punditoids on TV McNews after, kind of going into conniptions and spaz attacks like Dan Rather did when he had to announce Jesse Ventura won in Minnesota. I don't believe this story, but it does appear the professional wrestlers, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, well, we don't understand it. We don't understand it, Barbie doll. Yes, Ken doll. We don't understand it. The 12th state in a row has elected Homer Simpson governor. That'll bring down vote fraud once and for all. Because also what we're up against when building media literacy and better bullshit detectors is just convincing people life doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be so stupid. We don't have to be so obedient. There was a big report a while back on the Pew Foundation, did a study of Americans' current attitudes toward religions and its place in politics and society, and one statistic popped out on that one. 78% of the 3,000 plus people they studied said that they had absolute standards of right and wrong, but only 5% said their absolute standards of morality and right and wrong were based on scientific information. 5%. What do the rest of them do? Here we go, putting down so-called primitive tribes for relying on witch doctors instead of big drug companies, when then we turn on the TV and we believe Dr. Phil, who isn't even a real MD, he's a witch doctor. He plays a doctor on TV. I mean, we have to illuminate what's possible. Spreading good ideas, pushing for good ideas is what puts them on the track to slowly but surely becoming reality. Don't let the issues be limited to, what sort of swift boat stuff gets thrown at McCain or Obama, and suddenly that's the only thing that's important. Oh, the flag lapel is much more important than people's homes being foreclosed on and things like that. No, turn it around. I mean, if we want something else, we can eventually get there if we keep hammering, and especially if Obama gets in, blowtorch up the ass the whole time those people are in power. Blowtorch up their ass. Don't ever let them get comfortable. Remind them that national security really means that everybody has a home. National security means everybody can drink the water without having to buy it in a bottle from Coke or Pepsi. National security means not getting your hand cut off at work and having your job outsourced to India and you have to train the person replacing you. National security means that we don't live in fear of being taken out to one of Dick Cheney's torture chambers somewhere. And now, according to the British Guardian, they're torturing people on ships in the Indian Ocean. 200 people on over a dozen ships are there now. We don't have to fear that. National security means a woman decides what to do with her own body. National security means the Federal Communications Commission is less concerned about Howard Stern or Janet Jackson's titty as a weapon of mass destruction and more concerned with people like Fox News and the wannabe Fox Newses lying like fuck on TV every single night without anybody being allowed to reply. The whole reason that corporate McNews has been so dumbed down and so skewed to the extreme right, or if they have a discussion, it's right-wing versus ultra-right-wing, is because a law was allowed to expire in the late 1980s that was called the Fairness Doctrine, that said if one political point of view gets on the air, you have to let somebody have the same amount of time to reply without some clown like Bill O'Reilly telling them to shut up every 15 seconds. We need to bring the Fairness Doctrine back. Media reform. National security means everybody has enough to eat. National security means everybody has enough money for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and everybody, even if they ain't got no money, has the right to see a doctor when they're sick or if they're hurting. I mean, that and raising the wages up from the bottom is going to stimulate the economy a lot more than $300 checks that just get spent on credit card bills or porn or gasoline. It wasn't just Martin Luther King who called for people to have a guaranteed annual income right before they killed him. Milton Friedman, the conservative economist, has called for it. Even Richard Nixon called for it. This is the reason I like third parties so much and remain a registered Green. You know, people aren't talking about the issues that matter, you make it one. Dennis Kucinich, the one decent Democrat running for president this time, not his platform, plagiarized from the Green Party, but hey, that's what the platform's for. So he proposed, since we have a cabinet position, a Department of War, which we renamed the Department of Defense after World War II. We got a War Department. How about a Department of Peace as a cabinet position? And the Bush Supreme Court probably will outlaw abortions fairly soon. So you take a page, again, from the religious rights playbook. They were pushing for a constitutional amendment banning a woman's choice on what to do with her own body. How about a constitutional amendment, since most of America supports choice, a constitutional amendment guaranteeing choice, no matter what the Bush Supreme Court has to say about it? Here's one from my mayor campaign. It just popped into my head. Cops should be elected, voted on by the districts they patrol. Humane drug laws. Easy way to get that started is the governor or the president, depending on if it's a state or federal prison system, can just commute all small-time drug offender sentences to time served and let them out of jail, close the extra prisons, and spend the money back in the education system where it belongs. Even the really nasty drugs that have killed some of my friends, like heroin and crack and the rest, should be decriminalized. Like they have in Holland or something, where people, if you're really that fucked up, you can go to a government health center and get your heroin on prescription for free, shoot up in peace, and what does that do? But it takes the drug trade away from the mob, away from the gangs, and then they don't have to spend all their time robbing and killing people to get money to pay the mob's high drug prices. Crime goes down. We have a minimum wage. How about a maximum wage? I'm probably the only person who's ever introduced by Bill Maher on Politically Incorrect as crazy when I got the producer to put a debate on maximum wage onto the program. But I believe that. I mean, six figures in its payback time. What causes more trouble in the world, drug addiction or wealth addiction? And I'll bet you if wealth addicts were put in rehab long enough to cure them of their problems, even Bill Gates or Dick Cheney could do good. You know, sure, Gates spends a few $1 million of his gazillion billion-dollar fortune on charity, but why not take the whole thing and start a new car company that builds electric cars? If you see a documentary called Who Killed the Electric Car, you will know that the technology for workable electric cars and pickup trucks exists right now. GM tried them out, Chrysler and the others. They worked so well that they recalled them from the people they test leased them to and destroyed them. Bring that back. Let Bill put General Motors out of business if he's willing to do it. And what do you get in exchange for maximum wage? All of a sudden, all education is free, no more student loans over everybody's heads, free health care for everybody, free transportation for everybody, including air travel. And to make taxes a little more bearable, obviously tax the rich more than the poor, unlike what is done now, and let people have about 12, 15 boxes on their tax forms to rank what percentage of their tax money they want spent where. I'll bet education and the environment will go straight up and the arms race will go straight down. Foreclosures on homes, there's a simple solution for that: squatting. Howard Zinn, the historian, points out that in the Great Depression in the 1930s, when people began losing their homes, they refused to leave. By the thousands, by the tens of thousands. A lot of people got them back after that. Legalize squatting, especially in buildings left empty for tax write-off purposes. Campaign finance reform the easy way, so they don't have to be covering themselves with brown lipstick just to get elected, even to a smaller office. No. 2 ways to do this. Number 1, limit campaign time in the election cycle, like they do in Canada or in European parliamentary democracies, to 30 days or maybe 60 days, but no more. And anybody who jumps the gun in electioneers or campaigns or asks fat cats for money ahead of the first day is automatically disqualified. That way, you don't have to get sick of all these people for a year or more in this pseudo-American Idol thing going on with the primary circuses now and all. And another way you can do it, and they've already put this on the ballot by public referendum, it's already law in Nevada. If you don't like any of the candidates for a certain office, you do have the option of voting none of the above. And if none of the above wins, they have to rerun the election with all new candidates. Local example, in San Francisco, they're going to dig up all the streets in the next 5 years to replace old sewer lines. Supervisor Tom Amiano has proposed, since we've already got the trenches, lay fiber optic cable and then give everybody broadband for free. Of course, Mayor Gavin Newsom won't hear of the idea, but it's still a great idea you might be able to make happen in your community. And we have no hope, zero, of competing in the global economy today unless we reroute a large chunk of our so-called national security budget to education, to health care, so people can show up work healthy, go to school healthy. And the American Society of Civil Engineers has reported that our infrastructures, like that bridge that collapsed in Minnesota, are in so much disrepair that it'll cost $1.5 trillion just to get it all fixed. Maybe we should start now. It would only cost $100 billion, which we blow in 6 months on Iraq, to weather strip all kinds of low-income low-income homes and save, well, that's where the $100 billion came from, save $100 billion in wasted energy costs and burning up fossil fuel if we just fix the stuff instead of waiting for private enterprise in the market like Herbert Hoover, George Bush, and the libertarians believe should be done. Fix it now. Bring the internet and phone service up to the superior standards of Europe and Japan. I mean, we can't keep giving up and settling for so little. We must not settle for being Bill Clinton again. The eagle cannot fly on 2 right wings forever. And we are tired of being freedom fried. And if we don't put our individual and collective blowtorch up the ass of our corporate appointed puppet leaders and keep it there, well, maybe one of those lovely Bush quotes, he may actually be right for once. I'll be long gone before some smart person
ever figures out what happened in this Oval Office.
We can do better. Let's do it. Start some fires. Thanks a lot.